gotten as many kids as are gonna show up, so I think we can start a little early here. Welcome everyone. All right, so just a little bit about us before we start. I'm Max. I'm a junior on Team 2052. I am our team's strategy lead. This is my email. You can take a photo if you want. I will respond as fast as I can if you have any queries about anything.
Yeah, I'm Mason. I'm also a junior. I'm the apps and projects lead. That's pretty much programming stuff that isn't on the robot. Yeah, and yeah, that's my email as well. We're both available.
All right. So here's a quick overview of everything we're going to go through. It's a pretty big list, but some of these sections are just a little small. So generally, we're just going to be going through the season as a whole, what each section looks like, and how you can apply strategy to help improve your performance. We're going to start with for everyone. So why is strategy for everyone? Well, I mean, in summary, strategy helps you perform better in your season. And it works at a bunch of different levels of play. It looks different at really high levels, really low levels, with a large team, with a small team. So this presentation aims to improve your strategy where you are at with however large your team is. All right, so we're gonna start here with kickoff. So typically the first thing in kickoff after you get your reveal video is you want to do a rules reading. This just generally helps you get a more in-depth understanding of the rulebook. Now we like to divide up the rulebook into sections so people don't have to read a 150-page rulebook all by themselves because that's a lot. So we typically will divide up into groups, and then these groups will then present these different sections to each other, and then you go back in afterwards and you find any questions or any points that people aren't 100% confident on. This just allows you to get a much more in-depth understanding of what the game looks like. Here are a couple of important sections that we'd like to have people present and read, and then there's a couple things here that don't change year to year, and as such, you don't really need to go over them in a rules reading. So you don't really want to go over like game rules, what the penalties are, construction rules, especially like robot size, height, and like frame perimeter restrictions. And then also the field or arena overview. And then sections that don't really change is like how the tournaments are run and the general rules for the event. All right, human robot. So this is a activity we and a lot of other teams like to do after we do a rules reading that really help teams understand what kind of strategy and what kind of robot they're aiming for the season. So typically we start by taping out a version of the field and using like previous year's game pieces as stand-ins. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, just just like tape on a gymnasium floor works perfectly fine, or even you can do like outside if the day's nice. So typically we'll divide up into two teams, each of which will choose different robot designs to have people playing those robot designs walk around the field and act out the match. And so you want to run a couple of these different matches with a bunch of different designs for robots, archetypes. We'll go over that in a second. Just try to figure out what types of robots and overall alliance strategies will perform better compared to ones that might have some weaknesses and not perform as well. So archetypes. So an archetype is a design for a robot. After you do your rules reading, it's good to have just a couple people come together and decide what are the different archetypal considerations that we might need to have. So typically, we like to consider where can they score. So for this year, maybe you had someone that could only do the trough, but could do all of the algae, versus a robot that could do all 4 levels of coral, but couldn't really score any of the algae. You want to do intake location. Are they a human player loader? Or are they a ground intake? If there's special intake locations, like last year, pulling algae off the reef or off of a coral mark. You want to consider what they can do in auto. And you want to be pretty pessimistic with that one because auto can be a little finicky, especially early on in the season. And then finally, you want to do endgame considerations. And robots should be limited. They should not be able to do everything, especially for when you're doing these archetypal designs, because just being able to do a couple things lets you narrow in on what exactly makes a robot perform well. All right, so we're gonna get just a bit into robot design strategy. So after you figure out what archetypes perform well, you want to settle on just a couple core mechanisms that you really want. I like to rank them in a level of importance. So maybe you want to do coral, for example, to be that top thing that you're going to be able to do, and then you also want to be able to do a deep climb as again an example for last year. Then throughout the season, you're going to work top down on importance, and if possible, you're going to work in parallel. But this really, how your team works really depends on how large it is and your own team structure. So I'm not going to touch too much on that.
All right, scouting. So scouting, especially match scouting, it's really different based on how many resources you have and people you can just send to scout. So it depends on your team size, really. For larger teams, the best case scenario we think for having a balance of both getting the right amount of data, a lot of data, and not burning people out and having too much scouting is having shifts of 1 to 2 hours of 6 scouters, so 1 scouter for each team. Yeah, and so there's lots of stuff to do at the events. There's a lot of fun things to do, and sometimes the most fun thing is not scouting, but you still have to scout a decent amount. I think you should. It's beneficial to have all this data, which we'll talk about later, for overall strategy. And then scouting is also opportunities to learn different teams' approach to the game, so kind of learning the game as a whole, not necessarily getting exact numbers for every team, but learning what team specializes in certain things. If you find teams that focus on algae or coral, you can kind of figure out who would be a good teammate for you to fit your strategy. And so sometimes scouting isn't all about the quantitative values, it's more about the qualitative and who works well with you. Yeah, and then scouting apps, it's a pretty wide range of things. You can get it on phones, tablets, yeah, and we have our own app, FRC Crawler, if you want a scouting app to use. It's open source, it's pretty nice, we think.
Question.
Yeah.
Is the scouting take place after the competitions have started?
No, for match scouting, it's live in the event. So you have 6 people in the stands, and you have shifts of people in the stands that, yeah.
But the contests are going on.
Yes, yes. So you're watching the matches live and putting in your notes who scores what and things like that. Sure.
What is scouting?
Scouting, it can look like different things. It could be on a phone and you're counting the number of game pieces team scores and things like that. That's more quantitative, so just raw data and numbers. And then also some things noting down what they do well. Are they good at driving? Are they better at just scoring game pieces? Because especially driving, sometimes you can't get that through raw numbers. You kind of have to get them to write something down in their own words of how they would describe what the robot is good at. And then for smaller teams, you can't have, normally, you can't have people always scouting every single robot. So spreadsheets and APIs go a pretty long way when it comes to this thing, because you can't always have people scouting every single robot. So the Blue Alliance has auto leave and endgame. So last year, that would be, auto leave is just true or false if they have left the auto, and endgame, for every robot, the API does provide a deep, for last year, it was a deep, shallow, and no climb. So you can get that just from the internet. Alliance-specific info, you can't get the exact score of every single robot through the API, and that's why larger teams have scouters. But smaller teams still should scout, but at a smaller scale. So maybe instead of worrying about each individual robot and how many they score on each level, for example, just working with the qualitative. So figuring out what they're best at. Are they good at defense? And just keeping in mind your robot and what it's good at and who would work well with you, and keeping a list of people that you think would be a good teammate for you. And then scouting alliances, these are a big thing. You can still get a decent amount of scouting data. There's public databases like Viper and Scoutadroit and Scatchodiaz. I've never been able to pronounce it. But Yeah, they're a lot better for champs. They don't always have tons of data for Minnesota specific events. I would say the second one up there is better for more smaller regionals. But yeah, there's always public databases. And then contacting another larger team or even a smaller team to combine resources, it's more like, it's more work to email the other team and coordinate something, but it can be good because you can get like the scouting power of a larger team because you have people in every robot getting every single score. Sure.
If I understand the scouting,
Yeah.
this is in competition when you're gonna form alliances, so that, like, for example, if you're really good at scoring, maybe you would like somebody who's good at defense, or...
Yeah. Yeah.
This isn't in the building of your robot, this is...
No, yeah.
Okay.
It's at competitions. Yeah. Okay, and at competitions as well, pit scouting. This is where you go around and ask teams what they're able to do, and like how they built their robot and what technologies they use. So sometimes it's not really about the data you get. It's sometimes more about, one, meeting teams. It's a great way to build communication skills because you kind of have a script. You have like a checklist of things to get done, but you should also encourage people to like talk to the team and get to know them. And it provides a script to get back to if you ever get lost. And yeah, pit scouting is mainly to sort through like capabilities like algae or coral. We use this during the strategy meeting. We use all the data scouting, which we'll get to in a second during our strategy meeting. And so yeah, if we just want to quickly sort like all the algae robots, then the pit scouting is great data for it. It's not as great for like seeing who self-reports on their scoring capabilities. Like if they say they're a really good score, it's not as reliable for that. And then pre-scouting, this is good for smaller teams as well. This is what scouting probably looks like for most smaller teams. It's just specifically scouting teams that you will play next in your schedule. So you look on like a sheet of paper, just on your computer, you highlight the teams you're going to play next, and then you figure out what matches that they're going to play in, and then you scout them. And so then you make a list of who you're going to scout, and then you figure out like what teams, you try to figure out you try to predict what the alliance will be like in the future. So say you have like a match at the end of the day with 3 teams, you try to scout those 3 teams throughout the day so that you can kind of predict what they would synergize like and what robot would do each role. So you kind of have an idea of what the match will play like before you even get into the match. Ball matches.
All right, so for qual matches, ranking points are like that big thing that you're trying to aim for. However, they're really only useful for when you're trying to be an alliance captain. Because other than that, it just is your ranking, and most teams that are alliance captains don't care about your ranking when they are choosing which team they're going to pick. Yeah?
Could you clarify what you mean by qual matches?
Qualification matches. So for the event structure, you play a bunch of qualification matches that rank teams, and then typically the top 8 become alliance captains. They then pick other teams for the playoffs, for the playoff bracket.
Thank you.
Now typically we recommend that every team does go for ranking points, even if they don't like plan on being an alliance captain, because you never know how well you're going to perform. Also, it's pretty courteous to the other people on your team, or your alliance partners in your matches who might be going for that alliance captain spot. So recently, there have been a lot of changes to ranking points, especially this year. They went from 4 ranking points that you can get in a match up to 6. They added another one to winning. So winning a match is now worth 3, it used to be worth 2. That makes it so winning is the most important thing when trying to aim for ranking points. The other stuff helps, but winning, if you don't win, you're up 3 ranking points, and you'd have to get all of the other ones in order to make up for that. So new this year, they added a ranking point for auto. And this matches a new trend that First is doing, where they are increasing the importance of auto to the overall match. Recently, they've been increasing how many points auto is worth, and now they've added or at least for this last season, a ranking point specific for it. I think recently, over years, they've had one ranking point that you can get in teleop and one you can get in endgame. So I anticipate that for upcoming seasons, they will have one for each of the 3 phases of the season, or of the match. Every year they vary a lot, but typically it involves scoring a bunch of points in a specific way. Cooperation. So this is the first tiebreaker. It has been for the last 2 years, I believe, and I don't think it's going to change. Because making it the first tiebreaker makes people actually want to do it. Because in 2023, nobody did cooperation because I think it was the last tiebreaker that year. I don't know. So it is your like the third priority. You only do it if you can guarantee that you're going to win and you're going to guarantee you're going to get all your ranking points. Then, if you're like, okay, we have a shot at doing that, so now we're going to go for that cooperation. Because typically a bunch of teams will all have the same number of ranking points, and so this first tiebreaker is really important, especially if you want to become an alliance captain. If you're going to aim for cooperation, it's really important to talk to the other alliance to see if they're also going to aim for it, because if they're not, then there's really no point in going for it, because you're not going to get it even if you fulfill your requirements.
Alright, so other focuses during qual matches, that's kind of the strategy related to what points you want to get and like how you want to get them. This is other focuses, so not necessarily just getting points, showing off your abilities, like last year, for example, going for net algae or even just going for cooperation, showing off your algae skills kind of promotes yourself to other teams, because you might be really good at scoring coral, but for example last year there was a lot of really good coral scoring robots, so you might, instead of showing off your already, it was more common to have a good coral score. If you showed off instead your like niche capability of doing algae, you might be sacrificing some points, but you kind of gain the like in people's minds, you become more of a niche robot that might have more of a use compared to just another coral scoring robot. And then talk to your alliance partners before, talking to your alliance partners before you play matches, that's important. So you kind of have an idea about what's going to happen in the match. Try not to go in blind, have a strategy, and like know what you want to do during the match. So know if you want to score algae, have that as a plan, and don't kind of go in blind and just start doing whatever. Try to coordinate some strategy before the match. And yeah, if you're right before alliance selection, you should talk to potential alliance captains about watching the match. This is like, if you want to show off your ability, say doing algae, then, and you think the alliance captain might be considering you, try to talk to them and say like, hey, would you mind checking out our match? I think we're going to do well on algae. We're going to focus on algae, and so we're kind of showing off to you our algae ability. So like, if you could watch it, that would be nice. So you stay in their mind as an algae robot. And then investigate potential partners. This is, again, for the scouters and the drag team, but the scouters especially, in the stands, scouting potential partners that would work well with your team. And then, have fun. It's not all about winning. It's not all about optimizing everything. It's about playing the best robotics you can. Strategy meeting.
All right, so strategy meeting. This is probably the most important strategical element of competitions for a couple of really important reasons. So the first thing is it helps you with alliance selection. This is the meeting that you plan all of your alliance selection stuff at. It also, at regionals, will help you figure out what's going to happen at the rest of the rest of your quals matches and where you predict you're going to end up. It also gives you a place where you can bounce ideas off of other people, because if you're just thinking everything in your head, sometimes ideas won't be fully formed. If you're speaking them aloud and getting feedback from other people, that helps really it makes the ideas more clear and concise. So when do you host the strategy meeting? We typically do it on the last day of quals, right before the day before alliance selection, just so that we have a big chunk of time. We typically do it over dinner, and we plan for about an hour, but they can get a little long. You want to hold it as late as possible in the competition so that you have the most amounts of data and you can more easily tell where you're going to end up for alliance selection. If you're going to be an alliance captain or maybe a potential first or second pick. So the first thing you should do in the meeting is you should try to determine where you're going to end up. So we like to try to be pessimistic with this. It's like, what's the worst case for all of our remaining matches, and then what's our best case. So your worst case, that lets you see, okay, so what might we be here? If a bunch of stuff breaks, that might mean, okay, we might be a first or a second pick. But if we do really well in these matches, we might be like the top 1 or 2 alliance captains. And then you want to make your pick lists, which I'll get later, based on that best case. Because even if you get like a middle of the row and you don't rank quite as high, if you're still an alliance captain, you still want to have access to the lists you made while, during the meeting. All right, and then this shouldn't take too long. It's just an estimation. Yeah. And then pick lists. So pick lists. This is going to be the meat and juice of the strategy meeting. So pick lists are essentially a big list of which teams you're looking at picking for alliance selection. This should be made even if you're not looking to be an alliance captain, because typically, if you're a first pick, the alliance captain will ask you, hey, what ideas do you have about second picks? And if you're like, well, I don't know, then that you're putting all the pressure on that team to be like, all right, well, we'd have to go through all these other teams and stuff. Versus if you have like, oh, we have this list of like 10 teams. What do you guys think? And you can have a much more enriched discussion while you are combining those lists. So for the first pick list, this can be fairly short. We aim for about 4 to 5 teams for regionals, just so that we're ready in case people say no or rankings really change up. It's just those teams that are like the top, like the people you work with best and that you'll synergize with the best for the competition, or for playoffs. Then for second picks, this is the most difficult list to make because there's like more of a middle ground of like performance levels where everyone isn't performing level of your first picks, but also there are still really good teams that you want to have. Also, depending on the general strategy of that of the year's game, you might need to make a couple of different second pick lists depending on which first pick you get. Let's say this year, your first pick was a really good algae bot. You want to maybe have a good coral bot for your second pick. Versus if your first pick was a really good coral bot, you might want to have a good algae bot for your second pick. So making these different lists depending on which first pick you get can help narrow down your specific match strategy. And then also, we like to make a don't pick list. Now this can be very difficult to do because you have to be GP about it. This is not a list for bad teams. There are no bad teams. They're teams that don't work with your strategy. So let's say you're looking to do a 3 offense. Yes?
GP?
Graciously professional. Gracious professionalism. So let's say you want to do a 3 offense alliance for playoffs. You might see a robot that just does a bunch of defense. They might do really, really good defense, but it doesn't work with your ideal strategy. So you say, well, we're going to put them on the no-pick list because they just don't align what our goals are for playoffs. And you need to add that, like the reason, because people will ask if you say, hey, we're probably not thinking this team to do this team when you like have you talk to your other alliance partners. They're like, well, why? And like you have to be like, oh, well, they primarily have been doing defense stuff, and we're looking to do a 3 offense alliance. They're like, oh, okay. All right, and then alliance selection itself. So, you get this one?
Yeah. All right. So this is a little bit iffy. You have to be very careful about this. So talk to teams that like to pick you. Again, you have to stay very GP. This is like right before alliance selection, going up to teams that you think you would work well with and telling them, hey, what are you thinking about us? Do you think you're going to pick us? So you stay GP, that's the main thing. Use data at the back of your claim. Don't just go to like the top 8 alliances and say, hey, what do you think about us? Would you like to pick us? Try to like pick teams that you genuinely think would work well with your strategy and use some data to back up your claim if you have that. Not all teams have that, but if you have, like, say what you specialize in and why you think you genuinely work well with their strategy and be a good alliance together. And then setting up communication. So your strategy meeting, your pick lists are they're going to be pretty solid and stay where they are. but especially depending on the worst and best case scenario, depending on what happens, it's probably not going to be the best case scenario, it's probably not going to be the worst, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, so you might have to change your pick list a bit depending on that. And so having good communication is good. Yeah, using Slack, we use Slack, you can use anything, but making sure that your communication stays solid and everyone is on the same page. And yeah, finalize any new info received from this communication and make sure your pick lists stay updated with where your placements are and where other placements are. Yeah.
What is Slack?
Slack, it's just a messaging platform. It's like a Google chat. It's like businessy kind of Discord, I guess you could say.
All right, so during alliance selection well, they changed it this year and it's now timed and it can get kind of tense on the field. So we like to always be working because teams can end early, so you never know how much time you have until you have to go up there and say your next pick. So while teams are selecting, you want to cross off teams so you're not constantly referencing the big Jumbotron looking for teams like, oh yeah, that team's been picked, okay. You want to have a physical list because Wi-Fi can be really spotty during these events. And you always want to be communicating with your people in the stands who would typically be having all of the data spreadsheets open, looking at all these different teams. And then also, you have to, again, communicating those no-pick teams with your alliance partners. All right, so playoffs. Congrats, you made it to playoffs. So there's no RP, no rating points. You're going for points. I think that's the big thing. You only care about winning, and auto tiebreakers are pretty rare, but that is the new first tiebreaker for matches. So when you're planning your matches out, you can be a lot more like specific in what you're doing because you're going to be working with your alliance partners for multiple matches. We typically like to try and choreograph what auto and like the first 20 seconds after auto looks like, so that you can have a really optimized first bit of the game before you get into that rhythm of teleop. And yeah, so you can be a lot more in depth with your match strategy.
All right, and then scouting during playoffs. To some extent, this is kind of like a secret sauce to doing well in playoffs. Pre-scouting, because the alliances are consistent, you can scout one alliance and you've scouted them for basically the whole playoffs, right? So try to only scout your opposing alliances because optimally your draft team is already coordinating with your alliance and having good autos and post autos and stuff like that. The opposing alliances though, you should try to pre-scout them. If you can, if you have the time and resources, try to look at each team's matches before playoffs and see what they specialize in and try to predict like what that alliance, what their makeup will be and what each robot will be doing, so you know which team will be doing what and like what their general strategy is before you even go into the match. And then like certain things to focus on, who will they use to defend, will they use defense at all, what will they be defending. Defense in general is a big thing here. If they have a team that showed off defense in the past, you should be aware of that and know what they're going to defend and everything related to that. And what can't they do? A lot of times alliances kind of have ability for everything to some extent, but there's definitely robots that specialize in certain things. So if you can defend that one robot, you might be shutting down a certain game piece or something like that. So try to figure out who would be a good person to defend to shut down certain scores. And things like that, and you get all that information from pre-scouting.
All right, so comps are not the only thing that happens during the season. There's a lot of strategy and preparation you can do for competitions that is outside of the competitions themselves. So first you have the build season. This is a really busy period, but there are a couple things that we like to recommend because they can like really help prepare you for the competitions themselves. So one of them is train your scouters. If your scouters are walking into the competition for the first time and scouting there for the first time, the data they're going to give you is not going to be the best data they're capable of giving. So if you can just have a couple of practices, maybe like an hour, where they just watch a couple of matches from previous years or week zeros, because a lot of week zeros will be like 2 or 3 weeks early. So you watch a couple matches from those, maybe have them fill out a Google form to practice, it can really like help them figure out what are we looking for. Also, if you tell them why they're scouting, they care more, and so as such will have like put more effort into scouting itself. Also, Chief Delphi. There is a ton of discussion on there and predictions, and there will be information that you have not thought of. That happens to everybody. There's like some new weird approach or meta that people are considering, and it's a lot of speculation, especially in build season. But when you get to the competition season, people will like post match links and be like, "Look what this team did here." I think that might be like a good meta for what might be coming up for our next competition. So for the comp season itself, so driver practice. Now this isn't directly related to strategy, but it helps a lot. Even if you don't have a field, just setting up like a little obstacle course for your drivers, just to get them practicing what it feels like to drive your robot, its weight, its acceleration, like how fast can you stop it. It helps a lot, and it helps have a lot better control on the field itself, where you don't actually get that many matches to practice. Also, watch other comps. There's basically always a competition going on. So if you can like watch like maybe one the week before and there's this new strategy being tested out and you get to implement that at your next regional, you're gonna have an advantage. And also again, Chief Delphi, a bunch of people post stuff and discussions. This is just a good place to find new information. And then finally, the off season. Now, this is not a very busy period, but it's a period in which you can practice. A lot of people attend off-season competitions, and that's like time where you can practice new and different approaches to strategy. Maybe you try running your strategy meeting differently, or you try a different like scouting app. Also, people, Chief Delphi will post new apps and like strategy, like statistics and stuff all the time. Like 4 got posted last summer alone. So a bunch of people are posting new stuff all the time. Really, really helps. But you can use that stuff when you're practicing at off-season competitions. All right. So for other competitions, there's just a couple things that change. So at Champs, it's a lot longer. Playoffs and Einsteins are on their own day, so you don't need to do like predictions during your strategy meeting. A lot more teams and a lot more matches, which means more scouting data you have to go through. So your meeting will probably take a little longer. And also, they have third picks. So you need to create a third pick list if you're expecting to be a first alliance captain, first or second pick. And then these should be backup bots, typically. So they should be aimed for be well-rounded instead of being one niche specific role.
All right, another quick note on different comp states. If you get to state, it's shorter. That's pretty much the main thing. Everything is faster paced. You can't really have like a fully fleshed out strategy meeting. We normally have it at lunch, but it's normally like 10 to 20 minutes of just like comparing who we think we would work well. You can't always get a great like list of like 1 through 10 and then cross out people. Sometimes you have to kind of make it up on the fly. Yeah, best case scenario you have like a pick list, but that sometimes won't happen. Less teams, less matches, so it's a more chaotic outcome. You have to trust the points less and ranking points less because there's not enough matches to kind of even out the curve, so there can be some outliers. So don't always like trust the rankings to say like who necessarily will score more even during playoffs. And then 4 alliance captains, right? It's not 8, so your pick list can be shorter, which kind of helps with the strategy meeting because you don't have to do much during the meeting, but yeah, overall just a shorter comp.
All right, does anyone have any questions? And that is a QR code to this presentation in case you missed a couple things while we were talking. Yeah.
And wouldn't it be true when you get to the regionals, there's been, I don't know, like this is kind of new to me, some kind of what you'd call perennial winners, and your pick list maybe is a little preordained?
To a very small extent, but a lot of times teams, it changes a lot, and especially not only like who's on your pick list, but also matters the order, because optimally you're like having 10 teams and then you cross out people that are getting picked as you're down there on the field. So, do you have anything?
Yeah, and then typically you host your strategy meeting like with only 1 or 2 matches left. So rankings have pretty much like finalized. You might be going up or down a couple of spots, but you can pretty easily predict like if you're going to be an alliance captain or a first pick or a second pick. So like you will pretty much know, yeah, we need to make a list.
But yeah, there are some teams that are consistently
Yeah.
doing well, so,
Yeah.
yeah. And one thing I want to clarify, scouting. I remember this my first year too. It kind of sounds like baseball scouting. You're like going to teams beforehand and seeing what they're doing. But match scouting specifically is like you're in the stands at the competition. It's not like beforehand. Just want to clarify that.
I mean, you can do that, but we've experimented with that in the past, but it's quite inconsistent because people change their robots a lot between their competitions.
Yeah. Any other questions? Are we good?
Comments, ideas, anything?
If you have any more niche concerns, you can come up to us and ask.
Or email us.
Yeah. All right. I think that's good.
How much time do we have left?
You guys have 5 minutes left approximately, so
We
you
nailed
guys
the
can
time
use the
perfectly.
extra time to go get, go to the bathroom, hit whatever. Actually, you've got about 7 minutes. So go up, ask questions, figure out where you're going next, whatever it is you'd like to do. Thank you, guys.
It was
Thank you.
great. So I wish you luck.
Thank you.
One thing, just a general recipe, whenever there's jargon or abbreviations, look at it. It's the first time it gets brought up, you just define what it is.
Yeah.
You have folks throwing slides, like RP, friends, and ranking point.
Yeah.
Again, only the first one, not.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just got kind of used to everybody.